pro-choice or pro-life? This has been an argument for as long as I've been alive and quite a bit longer. People feel very strongly one way or the other, for good reason. I personally think the choice between those two is really dumb. Essentially, as I understand it, the arguments boil down to this. Someone who's pro-life thinks under no circumstances or under extremely limited circumstances should a woman be allowed to have an abortion, period. Someone who is pro-choice, their argument is, if a woman wants to do that, then they should be allowed to do that. I feel a lot of sympathy for people that would have those kinds of arguments either way. Maybe I'm just really naive about this. I think the average person would rather an abortion not occur. It's kind of just an unpleasant thing to think about. It's an unpleasant event. I suspect many women who and men involved with abortions, it's a major part of their life. It's something they think about from time to time, even if it was a long time ago. I just think rather than focus on should it be legal or shouldn't it be, which has been decided for decades on a national level, I think we could start to shift the conversation a little bit. I think the main goal, probably of everybody, is, it'd be nice if there were fewer abortions. And by the way, abortions have been steadily declining for quite some time now. I think that, if we're trying to reduce the number of abortions, we're reasonably going to want to reduce the amount of unplanned for pregnancies, right? And to do that, I think we need comprehensive sex education in schools, and which involves a lot of teaching about birth control and how to appropriately use that. Studies show places that do abstinence-only education, in other words, they say, the sex education in schools essentially don't have sex with people until you're married. That way you'll know if you're going to have kids and you won't get any STDs. Comprehensive sex education it includes that's a way that some people might do things, and that's a totally legit way to go about your life. It also teaches, well, if you are going to be sexually active, then here's how you use birth control so that you don't get STDs and you don't get pregnant if you don't want to. So studies show pretty strongly that places with comprehensive sex education have fewer unplanned for pregnancies, and places that do abstinence-only education have more pregnancies. You might remember Sarah Palin, her daughter was quite pro abstinence-only education, talked about how that's the way it should be done, and she got pregnant not once but twice when she wasn't planning on it. And it just is like, man, don't you see what's the problem with just telling people that birth control exists? Where comprehensive sex education is taught, there's a fear that will just motivate kids to have sex. They'll go, oh, well, I can have sex without any consequences. I'll just have tons of sex then. And it's kind of like this morality issue a lot of people have concerns about. Studies show that that's not really an issue. Things stay pretty much the same, except for there's just fewer unplanned for pregnancies. So I think, throw this, are you pro-life or pro-choice argument out the window. It's dumb, in my opinion. And what are people's actual plans for reducing unplanned for pregnancies, which have a ton of other consequences and fallout other than abortions, by the way? Because I just think this, are you pro-life or pro-choice, is kind of a stupid dichotomy that politicians get placed into. It's the easiest thing in the world to lie about. You might not have any opinion on abortion whatsoever, but if you're in a conservative place like Utah or Nebraska or something, and you say you're pro-choice, you're not going to get elected to public office, period. If you say you're pro-life, you might be the most horrible, scummy person in the world, but if you're like, oh, well, I'm pro-life though, you'll get a ton of people to vote for you. And just not to be a jerk, but to all those people who vote essentially only on if someone is pro-choice or pro-life, regardless of whatever else that politician believes, you've kind of thrown your vote away for decades now. I don't understand why more people don't notice this. I mean, I'll vote for this dude or this lady, even though they're horrible, but they're pro-life, so I'm going to support them. Well, that's never going to come up in anything they do on a national level. The decision's been decided. To me, it's so unlikely that would ever be reversed on a Supreme Court level. And you're just like, well, I'll give this person a free pass to be a member of Congress because they said a few words that they'll never need to actually prove they believe. And even if they did, nothing will change anyway. So, I mean, I really invite you to reconsider who you're voting for. I'm not saying like switch parties or something, but just because someone says they're pro-life, I mean, that will essentially make no difference whatsoever in the country or in your life. So I would really consider looking at the other types of issues those politicians stand for. Stop getting distracted by pro-life or pro-choice. Think instead about, well, does this person actually have a plan to reduce unplanned for pregnancies and thus reduce abortions?